Hi everyone, it's Laura and you're here for mobility from the ground up. Today we're working on knee mobility. And I have, before you jump into things here, I want you to grab a couple props. I have a rolled up yoga mat, I have a couple yoga blocks, and these are just things for me to, when I'm laying on the ground, under my head. We'll also be doing something where something's going to be going under our knees. So either of those or like a firm cushion could work at home. I also have the spin bike here today as something I can hold on to that's not going to tip. It's pretty heavy. So if you're at home, you can use a door frame or you can use a kitchen counter as well. That would be something that you can use, or anything that's solid and stable that you can use to make sure that we don't fall backwards, say, if we're squatting low. All right, that's what you need. And we're gonna see how the knees feel here today. We're using our squats. We worked on squats a couple weeks ago. But the knee is capable of moving through a big range of motion in a squat if it's available. So we're gonna hold on to that sturdy thing that we have that's not gonna tip over, that you can hang on a little bit. And you're gonna lower yourself down. You're gonna try and get into your fullest expression of your squat. So a really low squat. If you're comfortable in a low squat, you might not need to hold on to anything. But what I want you to play with here, you can be hanging, it's going side to side. You're in a deep knee flexion here. And then once you do that a couple times, come back up. So here, when our knee is straight, the knee has been extended fully, and then as we go down into the squat, potentially very deep into a squat, we're getting into really deep knee flexion. These are two of the motions of the knee: extension as we stand, and as the back of the leg moves away from the upper back to the lower back of the leg. And then we have that knee flexion as we lower down. When we're moving around on the ground, when the knee is bent, there can be a little rotation of that lower leg relative to the upper leg. So kind of a secret knee motion, which we'll play with here today too. So come back up. We'll go down one more time. If you want to limit the knee flexion here, or make it so you don't have to worry about other things, there's two things you can do here as we move forward. We'll come back to the squat. You can do a heel elevated squat, which just takes a little bit of work out of the ankle so that you can focus on the knee. The other thing that you could do is limit the flexion of the squat. If you're a person who their knees don't want to flex that much, you can put a rolled up blanket, rolled up towel, or this rolled up yoga mat behind you to limit the amount of flexion. All right. So we've done our squats here. How are your knees feeling? Kind of walk around a little bit, see how things feel. And we're going to go through several movements of the knee here using lunges. So I'm going to start square to you. If your knee doesn't like being flat on the floor or directly on the floor, you can put something a little bit soft under there. Folded up towel works really nicely. But we're going to keep working on that flexion of the knee. So the front knee, we move forward. The front knee is getting into deeper flexion, and then the back knee is simultaneously extending as we move forward. And I'll show you from the side view in a moment. But here, I want you to make sure that your knees are tracking kind of like the second and third toe on that front foot. A lot of times with knee mobility, what will happen is that the tension patterns that we have cause the knee to go in or out, so they're not tracking the toe, and this creates a torque force on the knee. It's kind of trapped in between the hip and the ankle, and it goes out to the side, and that can put a lot of pressure on the knee. All right, let's go to the side view here. We can switch sides, but I'll show you the side view here. So I've got my top of the foot flat on the floor. If you want to tuck your toes, that's okay. But I'm moving forward, deeper knee flexion in the front, extending through the back. And I'm going nice and slow. And again, I'm watching my knee. And as I go forward, I'm making sure that my knee tracks the same direction as my second and third toes. So it doesn't veer in and it doesn't veer out. Do one more time here. And again, we're really focusing on this front knee right now with the direction it's going, but you're moving the back knee simultaneously. You might be getting a stretch. These muscles here. And let's come out of that. We're going to give ourselves a little break from that lunging motion. We're going to work on a different motion. I'm going to use my mat, my rolled up yoga mat here, just sit on it. It's a little more comfortable. And what we're about to do here is shank rotation. Excuse me. Now, I'm going to have to put one foot in front, and then you're going to pull the toes toward the shin. And I want you to pretend like your ankle and your foot are in a cast. They're not able to move. Now, at the top of your shin, most people can feel like the shin bone there. And I want you to try and move the top of that shin bone. This is I call it a shank rotation. Your lower leg is the shank. And we're rotating that lower leg. This is really useful in that low squat. When our knee is bent, we can rotate the lower leg. For a lot of people, this doesn't feel like you're doing much, and you might just move your foot. So double check here. Is the motion coming from the ankle and the foot, or can you actually see that bone up here where it meets under the kneecap rotates in and out? All right, if we can get a little motion there, it takes pressure. Takes a little pressure off of our knees when we're in that low squat. So let's go the other side. Pull the toes toward the shin. I'm looking at the top of this is the top of the tibia. Is that top of the shin bone? For a lot of people, it sticks out. If yours doesn't stick out, it's okay. You likely still have a tibia there. Excuse me. But as I rotate that outward, you can see that my foot moves out, and as I rotate it inward, my foot moves in. I've got a little bit more outward rotation than I do inward rotation, and everyone will be a little bit different. But we want to have that movement there. We'll come back to this move because at the first time, often it feels very foreign. Most people have never concentrated on doing this motion. So we're going to go into a different lunge. And you'll come up. We're going to do a wide stance. We're going to start with, and this is actually kind of a lateral squat move here. Our feet aren't moving, but I'm going to have you move your hip to one side. And so the side that I move my torso toward, the knee is bent, and the other side, the knee is relatively straight. So we're going to use the hands and walk across to the other side. A lot of times our knees really only see that flexion and extension, and they're it's you get up from a chair and then you sit back down in a chair, and then you get up from the chair and then you sit back down in your car, and then you get up out of your car and then you sit back down in the chair. So there's oftentimes their knees, which have a pretty big range of motion from straight all the way into that like deep squat kind of motion. Most of us our knees never experience that. And so it feels really weird, not really great. So we got to expose our knees, these motions. I'm going to show you the side view here. So moving away toward that side, and then I move this way. When we're doing a forward lunge, I encourage you to have your knee track the direction of your second and third toes. Same thing here. We want to have the knee track second and third toes. If getting your hands down on the ground here is like a non-starter, a great place to do this is with a couch in front of you, or a bench, or a big ottoman. And you can put your hands up on that so it doesn't have to be all the way on the floor. If you don't have that, you can also use yoga blocks, so you don't have to get all the way down with the floor. You can kind of walk the yoga blocks back and forth. Again, if you look here, my knee is tracking the direction of my second and third toes. Then I come over. If you feel comfortable here, we're going to do a more advanced version of that. So if this feels right for you, or the hands down version feels right for you, also really works your hips too, then stick with that. But we're going to go back to that shank rotation, that lower leg motion, and do that one more time each side. So pull the toes toward the shins. If you happen to have like a marker nearby or a pen, you could if you put an X on top of that shin bone, pull up you don't have to do it on your pants, but if you pull up your pants, you can put a little dot or an X on top there. You can actually see that bone moving underneath if you get the rotation, which is kind of cool to see the motion. Because sometimes, again, we can be tricked by what's going on with the foot and the ankle into thinking we're moving up here when really a lot of the movement's down here. So that gives us a visual of if that lower leg is rotating. All right, let's go to the other side. You can do this in any position. So even if you sit up on a chair, you can do this, as long as the knee is bent. You cannot do this lower leg rotation when your leg is straight. So try not to do this when your leg is straight. It won't be able to happen, and you might put some pressure, unnecessary pressure. So again, you could put that X or that dot top of that shin bone, and we're rotating. Lateral motion when we move out, and medial motion as we move in. All right, so we're going to go back to our low squat. So if you need something steady to help you into that low squat, or if you need something under your heels or in between the back of the knee, then grab that. I'm going to do the low squat here so you can see it a little bit better, but we're all going to go into a low squat, however your version is. And we're going to do this side to side motion again. If you're holding on to something, that's great. But here, as we move, you can move side to side or kind of move your butt side to side. This is where that medial rotation can come into real life if we're getting down into a low squat in our real life. I like to garden me here a lot. I can't do it for super long time, but you can start to think, if this feels comfortable, how can you start incorporating low squats into your daily life? Now, this was a long time to be in a low squat if you're not used to being there. So put your hands down in front of you, and we'll come out of it. To put a little less pressure on the knees here and still work on that motion, that deep flexion of the knee paired with the lower leg rotation. I'm going to get up on my yoga blocks. So just find something that you can put your knees up on, and then you're in that hand-knee position. We're going to rock back with our hips, and notice that my toes are tucked here. It's more true to a squat position here. And I'm sending my hips back toward my ankles, and then I'm going to take my hips side to side. And we can get a little bit that deep flexion with the rotation. Again, if the knees are like, this is too deep of a flexion, then you can limit your flexion with something like this yoga mat, two legs or a cushion, pillow, whatever you have available that stops that backward range of motion. All right. From here, I told you we were gonna do a more challenging version of that low lunge. So you come out of that rocking, like the rocking position squat there. And remember, we start wide on this side to side, kind of lunging looking motion, or a lateral kind of squat motion. You can walk the hands with yoga blocks. You can have your hands up on the couch, whatever you need to do to support you if that's where you're at, if that was the limit today. But if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, then you can come into a really low lunge. From the side view here, my heel is up, the ball of the foot is down. I'm in a really deep knee flexion here. My hands are on the ground. I'm going to transfer my weight over to the other side. Now this heel is up over here. To get the better position for you to see it. This heel is up over here, straight leg over here. This foot's kind of relaxed wherever it feels comfortable. So I'm going to stay in this really low lunge, a couple times back and forth. There's a lot of knee work here. Notice that my knee is still tracking my toe, even in this position. That helps protect knees from any unwanted torque forces. And again, if it's too much for the knee, come up and out of it. We'll go one more time to the other side. A lot of times the knees can handle it. It's the hips that don't want to do this one because it's a lot of work for the near thighs, which we're going to work on in a moment. And I'm going to have you here on this next lunge. You're going to go back to the first side. Let me show you from the side view. So again, this is if it's not available to you, find the version that works for you. But I've been having my heel up here, and now I'm going to shift back so that my foot's flat on the ground. My leg is still out to the side over here. And now back to the side. And then come up again. And then knee down. So then I'm going to lift my knee up on the ball of my foot. Then I'm going to shift my weight down to my heel so that my foot's flat on the ground. Let's do that again. We're putting with the rocking and then the knee down here. We're putting some pressures. We're moving through some loads to the knee that it doesn't normally see. So if it doesn't like it, small doses counts, all right? So we don't need to do this 5 times. If one time was enough, or you can kind of stay in this zone here. Because now here I'm holding myself up. Always hold on to something too. Let's do the other side. I'll do this time from the front view. So I'm moving toward my right side, I just did my left. Notice as you look from the front view that my knee is always tracking my toes. My heel's down. Now this is a lot of inner thigh here. And you might not have a smooth transition. All right, so you might have to like throw yourself forward and then kind of flop back into it. But as your knees and, I mean, this is everything, hips and ankles. I know this is focused on the knee here, but it's everything here. And really the knees kind of always in between that ankle and the hip. So one more time. It's hard to separate knee mobility from the pieces that surround our system. So everything's connected. All right. Let's come out of that. Give yourself a little break there, maybe. However, a break looks like for you, it might be water. A lot of times when I'm in deep knee flexion, deep ankle flexion, the only thing I really want to do is stretch everything out, extend everything. So if you're comfortable with it here, we can go into, I'm going to do a fixed pose here. So I'm tucking my tailbone under a little bit, and that stretches out the front of the hips. So we're extending the hip after a lot of deep hip flexion. The knee is straight after a bunch of very deep knee flexion. And my ankle is currently called plantar flex, that point. But we were here, deep dorsiflexion earlier. So doing opposite position. That tucking of the tailbone is really important for the low back. And if it doesn't feel good, you can come even lower, especially if you're that low back, that lumbar position doesn't feel good for you. That big arch. All right. We're going to keep giving the knee a little bit love, but we've been working on that deep knee and hip flexion with the ankle flexion. So now we're going to work on the kneecap. So the patella, most people don't think about their patellas very often, but it's that, most people know where their kneecap is. It's right about there. It looks like kind of a triangle shape. And ideally, the kneecap rests in a very relaxed position. So we're gonna do a little kneecap fun here. So for a lot of people, we tend to be quad, so the front of the thigh dominant, and we don't use the back of the leg and the glutes quite as much. It's not everybody, but it's the majority of people that I've worked with. And so we're gonna sit up on something like this. It can be a chair too. I just don't have a chair in here, so you can grab a chair. But what I want you to do is give yourself access to your kneecaps. And from here, you're going to kind of play with, can you move your kneecaps? So the top of the kneecap is relatively flat when we're feeling it from this perspective. But the bottom of the kneecap, if you think of the kneecap, it's kind of like a diamond. So there's kind of like a point that goes down into the patellar groove. And so if you squeeze your quad and feel your kneecap, you'll notice that it doesn't move. So if you squeeze your thigh, it'll actually pull the kneecap up and it won't be able to move. It'll be stuck in place. So when we bend the knee or when we have a tight quad all the time, the kneecap won't move. So what I want you to try to do is get your quads to relax so that you can move your kneecap around. I often say that it feels like your kneecap when it's able to move is like moving around in like a soft jelly. It's really the soft tissue around the knee. It's all that connective tissue that's there. So find that kneecap. Can you move it? If you bend the knee a little, notice that it can't move when it's bent. But when you have a straight leg, it'll be able to move. So this is a little bit different than this is more of like an alignment awareness thing than some of the ground mobility we've worked on. But in your daily life, if you can get your quads to relax and the kneecaps to drop down and be able to move in that soft tissue around the knee, then you're giving your knees a better chance for less grinding back there. Not necessarily grinding will always happen or result in pain, but if you know you have tight quads, knees that are achy, this can be really powerful. All right, so we're gonna keep working with a straight leg here and thinking about the knee. The other thing that often happens with our quads, because they're so strong, is that a lot of times they'll pull the kneecaps up all the time. And many of us are stronger on the outside of the leg than on the inside because of just our daily lives. So a lot of times the kneecap will be pulled toward the outside. Did you notice when you tighten the quads, it pulls the kneecap up? So if we're stronger on one side, it's going to pull the kneecap that direction. Most of us are stronger on the outside. And our inner thigh, remember I said we're going to do some inner thigh love here? Our inner thigh doesn't do as much. So we're going to work on an exercise that's going to strengthen the inner thigh in order to bring the patella back to center. So you can think about this as recentering your patella. I'm laying down on my back here, and I have something under my head. That feels better for my neck. So use what you need. We're going to do a leg lift. So I just want you to lift your leg a couple times. And notice, and put your hand on your leg here. Notice where you feel the work. The quad's definitely working here. We're not trying to relax the kneecap here. One more time on the side. You don't need to go like fast. I actually want you to go slow with this. Let's switch sides. And I only want you to go as high as that other leg. So one leg is straight, lifting and lowering, the other leg and the knee bent, foot flat on the floor. All right. Now for most of us, when we do this, we don't, some people will feel it through their quad, but most of us don't feel it through the inner thigh. So what I'm gonna have you do is let your foot turn out. We're gonna go back to that first slide. So you're duck footed essentially. I'm gonna turn here so you can get a better view. So I had my toes pointed straight up to the ceiling before. Now I'm gonna turn my toes so they're out to the side. What that does is gets my inner thigh rotated to point more toward the ceiling. So it gets to do more work here this time around. We're gonna point the inner thigh to the ceiling by getting a little bit duck-footed and then lift. Nice and slow. We're gonna go 5 times each side. Slow is the name of the game here. Also, you do not have to go the height of your knee. That's your maximum. But if you're really, if this is a lot of work here, maybe just go a few inches off the ground or even 1 inch off the ground to really work that inner thigh. I did a couple of little small ones down there to demonstrate. I'm on my 5th big one here. And lower down. All right, so let's switch sides. So my left foot, my second foot's flat on the floor now, the one that was just lifting and lowering, and then I'm gonna straighten out my right leg, turn so I'm duck-footed and that also effectively gets my inner thigh more oriented toward the ceiling. Then I lift very slowly and I lower. Now we really want to make sure that this is coming from the leg, the motion's coming from the leg. So if you're feeling this in your low back a lot, it's likely you're lifting a little bit with that low back. So limit your range of motion, or you may have seen this in some core exercises. Put your hands under your glutes, flat under your glutes, and that'll help take your low back out of this. Again, turn the toes out, inner thighs more oriented toward the ceiling. Again, all to help center the patella more toward the midline. Let's do 5 more each side here. So back to my first leg, turning the toes out, inner thigh to the sky, and lift. If you want more of a challenge here, try to not press so hard into the ground with your non-raising leg. So I'm raising my left leg now. My right foot's flat on the floor. I'm trying not to press too hard into the floor with that. And that'll make the inner thigh work even more. Good, that was 5. Let's switch sides. Left foot's flat on the floor. Straighten out that right leg. Toes turn out. Inner thighs facing the ceiling. If you want that extra challenge, try not to push so hard into the floor with the foot that's flat on the floor. We do it unconsciously here. Like if you're doing it, it's like you're pretending like your foot's hovering above the floor a little bit. Like that push into the floor can take force away from the inner thigh. So let's make the inner thigh work for it if you need that extra challenge. If it's already working, you don't need that right now. All right, we made it through that. We're gonna finish up with a couple more squats here. So do your squat however you need to, whether you use the heel lift, if you might be using a chair to squat down toward or a lower surface. Whatever you need, hold on to your equivalent of the spin bike wherever you're at, and go down into a low squat. See how your knees feel? Knees are tracking the toes. Go side to side. Does this feel better than it did before, or are you fatigued from all this knee work? Then come back up, extending the knee. Good challenge here now that we know how to relax the kneecap. Your kneecaps can relax when you're standing. Much harder to do than when you're sitting, so if you can't get it, it's okay. Go again. Go side to side. Take the hands away if you're comfortable with that. If you feel like you're going to fall back, but it's only a little bit, you can put your arms out in front and counterbalance your a light weight just to help pull you forward so you're not falling back. If you need a lot of help, stick to that countertop or sit by. Come back up and see if you can relax your quads here. Let your kneecaps relax and drop. Check the hand. Try not to take your head on anything. We're going to do one more squat to finish out. Yeah, and if you just need a little bit of some fingertips on that door frame, countertop, whatever it is, or you can have a little weight in front of you. That weight, all you might need is your arms out in front. Working on full knee range of motion, flexion through extension at the bottom, that little motion. Give your knees a little break by trying to relax. Tell them to relax, pat them, you can relax. Letting my kneecaps drop a little bit so that I reduce pressure behind that patella by being able to move them. All right, well, I hope you can take a little walk around, see how your knees feel. We definitely, by moving through this deep flexion to full extension, putting pressure on the knees, moving in different ways. I hope that your knees feel better. They might need a little love. So feel free to drop those kneecaps whenever you can think about it, and I will see you next time.